Hello, I'm Prieto from Egon Zehnder. Thank you for joining us for a series of discussions that we are holding along with our colleagues at the Latino Corporate Directors Association.
Thank you, Al. And I am Esther Aguilera, President and CEO of LCDA. Today we're joined by Consuelo Madere. She's a retired executive from the agri giant Monsanto and serves on 3 corporate boards. Consuelo, welcome.
Could you share a bit with us, a little bit about your background and career history?
I grew up one of 6 children in South Louisiana. My mother was from South Louisiana. My dad was first generation Mexican. And I would say we grew up with not a lot financially. Of course, I think we were rich in many other ways. But one of the things I always remember about growing up was my parents always emphasized how important it was to be able to get a better education and to be able to work hard, because if you did those 2 things, that would lead to success. So I studied chemical engineering at LSU, and I then pursued an MBA from the University of Iowa.
You picked an interesting field, chemical engineering. Certainly not one that's known for, engineering is not known for diversity. It'd be interesting to understand what chose you to go that path.
Especially at that time, I think I really enjoyed math and science. I really didn't know what chemical engineering was, but I said, well, I'm going to try this. I remember at orientation, we were told, look to the left and look to the right, and most of you aren't going to finish in this curriculum, and there weren't very many diverse candidates, if you will. And I made up my mind right then and there, oh yes, I will. I'm going to show them, because my parents always said, you work hard, you study hard, you can do whatever you want to do. And as I got into it, I really enjoyed it. And that's what kind of solidified, oh yeah, this is problem solving, this is using math and science and some analytical skills. So I kind of migrated toward that.
Going from chemical engineering to another field that's not known for having a lot of women or Latinas, which is agriculture. You grew your career in that space. How did you go from chemical engineering to large agribusiness?
I really enjoyed the chemical area, and when I joined Monsanto, a piece of their business was agriculture. Little did I know at the time that would evolve to be their entire business. I stayed with it because I could see the connection to growers. We're producing products that are going to help people grow food. And so it was rewarding from that perspective of, if you've got to feed a growing population, even the little bit of contribution that I can make working in an agricultural space was going to be something that was rewarding.
And tell us about your journey at Monsanto to the executive suite. Were there certain inflection points along your career, or did you have mentors or sponsors along the way?
There weren't a lot of people that looked like me early in my career that were at very senior levels of the company. But as time evolved, there were more. But even in the early days, I would say I had some good coaching and mentoring, even from non-diverse senior executives. I got good advice, I would say, on taking roles that would help me develop that maybe I hadn't considered would be something that would be a good fit for me.
And what was one of those first pivot points to a larger executive role and position? And how did that happen?
One, I would say, is taking a role that was outside of my comfort zone. And I remember taking that role and saying, am I the right person to lead this? There's never been a female, certainly not a Hispanic female, to lead this organization. There's never been a non-PhD or outside of one of these areas of agronomy or pathology or plant science. And so I ended up taking the job, and it was probably truly one of the best things I could have done career-wise, because not only for myself, it gave me a lot of confidence in the ability to lead a large organization, but also that, you know, you didn't have to be the expert that knew every detail of how these jobs were done. You had to ask the right questions. You had to be able to paint the picture, the vision of where the organization could go, and you had to develop the people around you.
You sit on the board of a small company, mid-sized company, and large company. Could you share with us some of the differences, if any, between those three kinds of categories?
I would say there's some dramatic differences, of course. So from, you know, a very small, more startup type company, obviously the board is at an earlier stage of development. And as a board director there, you end up probably wearing more hats than you would in a larger board. But what's kind of fun is that you do have a chance to shape the governance policies of the company. You have a chance to really make an impact as a director on not only the board but the company and how we think about employees and developing those employees. With my mid-sized company, I think one of the things that was really refreshing joining that board was I was the first female, first Latino on the board, and you don't take that lightly. But one of the things that inspired me to join them was because the CEO had come in not too long before I joined the board. He had come from a large company that had a lot of experience with diversity and development of people. And he was very adamant about the importance of diversity. And then the largest company that I'm a member of the board, when people say they can't find diverse candidates, I say that's an excuse. This board has 12 members, which include the CEO. It's a big agricultural company, and 4 of us are female, all from very different backgrounds. There's another minority candidate on this board as well as myself.
Well, Consuelo, you have been the first in many areas across your career trajectory, from, you know, chemical engineering to running a big operation where you were the first not to have a PhD, the first woman and Latina, and in some of your boards you've been the first. What have you brought to the boardroom having had those experiences?
You learn to listen, learn to ask a lot of questions, and even if you think this might be, you know, kind of basic question, it could be something that no one else is asking. And so it may bring to light some new things. For me, being a first, it's important to set the right example. It's important to be well prepared. It goes back to growing up and study hard and work hard and always be well prepared for the business discussions, for the board discussions.
What have you observed to evolve in the mindset of a board that's thinking about diversifying, and how they look at the talent pool in order to create the space for a diverse director to join?
If you want to be inclusive and have diversity, you have to attract diverse candidates, so get them in the room, and then you also have to act in a way that causes them to be able to help to add value to your business.
Can you speak a little bit to when you were looking at potential board opportunities for the first time, the process of how you evaluated opportunities and what that looked like from a time frame perspective?
One of the most important things to remember is you have to be patient. So as I started to look for my first board opportunity, I had a couple different opportunities. And the first one that I was approached with was one that the company really wasn't a company that I felt aligned with my values and what I could be passionate about and what I could bring to the table. So I said no, and I remember talking to one of my colleagues, and they said, "Why did you say no? I mean, it's difficult to get a board opportunity." And I said, yes, it's difficult to get a board opportunity, but it has to be the right opportunity or you shouldn't do it. And at the same time, you need to be respectful in how you turn down one of those opportunities.
What would you advise somebody who decides or is considering a smaller board, given that you've seen small, middle, and large size company boards? What would you advise them before they get started?
I think for any board that you're thinking about, there are a few pieces of advice that I would give. One is you need to clearly understand, what are they trying to achieve? What's the culture of that organization? Is this a good fit for me and my values? And what's the work that they're doing? And not only what's the work, but how do they get the work done? If it's a smaller board, I think you need to go in eyes wide open. There generally are fewer resources. And so you have to go in with the thinking that you're probably going to have to spend sometimes a little more time in a smaller company as a board member than you would in the larger companies.
We work with a lot of prospective directors and individuals, really terrific executives that are seeking board seats. What advice would you give to those that are thinking about it?
Be well prepared. I knew about a year before I was ready to retire. At the time I was working full-time, I had been approached about boards, but we were not allowed to be on external for-profit boards. And so when I knew it was getting toward time for my retirement, I approached the CEO and the president of the company and said, "Hey, I know I want to pursue a board role once I leave. Will you support me in helping me get some development before it's time for me to go?" And they were very supportive. So I signed up for some of the NACD programs on early, new director, programs. I went to one of the Stanford Directors College programs. I also talked to other folks that I knew that had served on boards and asked their advice. How do I get prepared? I got my resume what I would call board ready instead of executive ready, which there's a distinction in how boards are looking at what you've done versus how when I'm searching for an executive, what that looks like. And then I got myself out there to network and raise my hand that I'm interested.
Tell me a little bit about, your brand in terms of a Latina leader and any advice that you have for Latinos who aspire to be corporate directors.
We all become who we are because of where we came from, sometimes because of it, sometimes in spite of it. I think you always need to remember where you came from. You need to think about how you can help others to achieve their dreams and their goals, help them to develop.